My name is Stephen Eisenman. I'm with Tamms Year 10. We're part of a consortium of reform, civil rights, human rights groups who are protesting the existence, really, of Tamms Supermax prison and who are applauding the governor's decision to close the Supermax this year. We have a number of people who are experts on Supermax confinement, on solitary confinement, on long-term isolation in prisons. We want them to be able to tell you about the prison and about the important issue here. So I'm going to give you a lineup of speakers, and the first person who will be speaking is David Fathi, who's with the ACLU, the Prison Watch Committee. So let me give it to David.
Thank you, Stephen. My name is David Fathi. I'm a director of the ACLU National Prison Project in Washington, D.C. The eyes of the nation are on Illinois today. Will Illinois join the growing list of states that are moving away from solitary confinement and supermax prisons? Or will it cling to this discredited, inhumane, and extremely expensive form of incarceration? Many states have managed to reduce solitary confinement, protect prison and public safety, and save millions of taxpayer dollars in the process. The state of Mississippi closed a 1,000-bed supermax prison and saved $8 million a year as a result. The state of Maine has been able to reduce its use of solitary confinement by more than 50% in just a little over a year. And Joe Pont, the Commissioner of Corrections from Maine, will be testifying about that later today. Colorado has cut its solitary population by several hundred, and as a result has just announced that it will close a 316-bed supermax unit, saving more than $20 million over the next 2 years. It's time for Illinois to be on the right side of history, do the right thing, and close Tamms now. Thank you very much.
I arrived at Tamms in the first week it opened. The day before I went to Tamms, I was in a minimum security institution. I caught no disciplinary report. I was a trustee. I made officers' uniforms, took them, put them in their cars, came back into prison, gave them their car keys. The next day I was in Tamms. I spent 12 years in Tamms. Prior to Tamms, I never attempted suicide. Sitting in a gray box 24 hours a day, no one to talk to, nothing to do. I mean, it's dehumanizing. I watched all you guys on the news down there. You know, nobody cares about the prisoners. It's about the jobs. I understand you need jobs, but come on, we're people too. I mean, I'm out here working 3 different jobs. I'm paying taxes. I mean, you want us to come out with some brains in our head, or do we just degenerate down there and kill ourselves? It's the choice. It saves money. Close it.
I'd like to introduce Alan Mills, who's the lead attorney in the Uptown People's Law Center in Chicago.
Good morning. Thank you for all coming out. My name is Alan Mills. I'm the legal director of the Uptown People's Law Center. As a result of a case that we filed back in June of 2010, Judge Murphy of the federal court in East St. Louis ruled that the prisoners at Tamms were entitled to due process. Since then, they've been given hearings for the first time as to whether they belong there, and it's a result of that process that Tamms is now emptying out. Tamms, whatever use it had back in 1998, and there's a big debate about that, is not needed now. This is an entirely different department. The few prisoners that are left there can be kept safe elsewhere. They should close Tamms. We can't afford it. It's a white elephant. It's a waste of our money.
Brenda, would you mind saying a few things about your experiences with your...
Yes, I have a son at Tamms. He's been in Tamms for 12 years. Originally, you were only supposed to be there for 3 years max. My son has been there 10 years. Why are they holding him there for 10 years? He needs to be released from Tamms. Tamms is slowly killing my son, and it's killing us as a family to know that he's enduring this inhumane treatment. They're treated worse than animals.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Deborah Ehrenberg from Amnesty International.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Ehrenberg. I'm the Midwest Regional Director for Amnesty International. We're the world's largest grassroots human rights organization. And Amnesty International has long raised concerns about the treatment of prisoners at Tamms. We're out here to support the closure. Prolonged isolation, and actually even short-term isolation, can result in lasting mental health issues that amount to torture under the Convention on Torture, which the United States has ratified. We're out here today to say it's time for the governor and the state of Illinois to do the right thing, to live up to our international obligations, to support the basic human rights of the people of Illinois, and stop using taxpayer money for human rights violations. Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce Darrell Cannon here. Darrell was twice tortured, once from Burge, Lieutenant Burge in Chicago, and also then subsequently having been sent down to Tamms and enduring the privations and suffering there.
Thank you all for coming here. Please know that Tamms has no redeeming value whatsoever. It's human misery at our expense. And I say our, I'm talking about the prisoners at Tamms. In case you don't know, Tamms is counted as part of the censors of the Tamms town. They need another way to inherit extra revenue other than killing those who in Tamms in one form or another. I spent 9 years there. Again, Tamms taught me absolutely nothing except misery loves company. And it's time for that kind of company to end. So by all means, we hope and pray that Tamms will be closed down between now and the next 90 days, hopefully. Thank you.
I'm Director of U.S. Prisons Policy and Program for the National Religious Campaign Against Torture. We're a coalition of over 300 religious organizations and over 63,000 individual members representing most of the major faith groups and denominations in America, including Catholics, Evangelicals, Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Methodists, Jews, and Muslims. The faith groups that belong to the National Religious Campaign Against Torture are in agreement that prolonged solitary confinement is inhumane in the way that it destroys prisoners' minds and therefore violates human beings' inherent God-given dignity. For people of faith across the country, ending prolonged solitary confinement has become a moral imperative, and for these reasons, the National Religious Campaign Against Torture is strongly in support of closing Tamms Correctional Center, where nearly 200 men remain in solitary confinement with little to no stimulation. There are numerous studies reporting on the psychological impact of solitary confinement. Some of the symptoms include paranoia, hallucinations, depression, suicide, and these consequences are of no surprise when we look at it from a faith perspective. We know from the very beginning that God created us to be creatures who rely on social companionship, and we see in Genesis in the very beginning that God said it's not good for man to be alone. And again in Proverbs 27:17 it states that as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. People of faith are in agreement that solitary confinement, prolonged solitary confinement, must end, and therefore we hope that the Commission today will find likewise. Thank you.
We have just one last speaker. Jean Snyder is an independent attorney. She has represented a number of the men at Tamms, particularly those who suffer from serious mental illnesses, which is a large number of men at Tamms. So, Jean.
Good morning. Steve gave you the broad outline. Seriously mentally ill men are sent to Tamms, and the prison makes them sicker. We know that. Tamms is the only prison in Illinois that was designed specifically to avoid human contact, and a bunch of other restrictions that are especially harmful for mentally ill people. Let's close this prison. For once, saving money will also add to human decency. Let's support the governor in closing Tamms.